Welcome to JForrest English. I'm Jennifer, and today you're going to learn all the common phrasal verbs that you need to know with pull and take. And you'll complete quizzes to make sure you really know these phrasal verbs. Let's get started. First, let's review all the common phrasal verbs with pull. To pull off a task. When you pull off a task, it means that you successfully completed a difficult task. For example, let's say that your boss asks your team to double their sales by the end of the month. That's a difficult task. So you might say, I don't know how we'll pull this off. How we'll complete this difficult task. I don't know how we'll pull this off. But let's say you do double your sales. After, you can say, I can't believe we pulled it off. I can't believe we did it. We completed this difficult task. And often, to reassure someone when they're completing a difficult task, you can say, don't worry, I know you'll pull it off. You'll pull it off. You'll complete this difficult task. To pull up a document, this is a must-know phrasal verb because when you pull up a document, you make that document visible on your device. It could be a computer, laptop, phone, tablet, it doesn't matter, but it has to be a device. So if you're in a meeting, you might say, give me a second to pull up that report. Give me a second to make that report visible on the screen. Now, you can also use this with social situations. You might be having coffee with a friend and then you pull up some vacation photos. You make those photos visible on your screen and you share them with your friend. And it's very common to hear this when you're calling any sort of customer support or client support. Let's say you're making a dentist appointment. They're going to first say, can I have your name, please? And then they'll say, give me a second to pull up your file. Because on your file, it's all the important information. But they need to make that file visible on their screen. Pull up. The best way to understand native English speakers and sound more fluent is by learning the most common phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions that we use in our daily speech. And that's exactly what we do in the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers on YouTube, TV, movies, and the news so you can expand your vocabulary, learn correct grammar, and improve your listening skills. You can look in the description below for more information on becoming a member. Now let's continue on. Now we also use pull up with vehicles. So if you're driving and you want to pull up to a store, it means you're going to slowly approach that store. Now you may or may not stop. You may just slowly approach that store, read their hours of operation, and then keep driving. Or you may pull up to that store, slowly approach the store, and stop your car. Here's an example of me pulling up to my mailbox. So notice how I slowly approach my mailbox. I'm seeing if there's any mail, but notice I don't stop. I keep going. Don't confuse this with pull over because you can also pull your vehicle over. Now, when you pull over, it means you're driving and you bring your vehicle to the side of the road and you stop. So you always stop when you pull over. So if you're in a taxi or an Uber, you might say, oh, you can pull over by the green house. You can take the car to the side of the road and stop by the green house. Now, we also use this with the police because if you're driving and you hear a siren behind you, well, you have to pull over. You have to bring your car to the side of the road and come to a complete stop. So here you can see me pulling over next to the mailbox. I'm coming to a complete stop. Now you can also pull in and out of a parking spot or a garage or some enclosed space for your vehicle. So when you enter the parking spot or garage, you're pulling in. I'm pulling into my garage. And when you exit, you're pulling out. You're pulling out of the parking spot or pulling out of the garage. So you might say, make sure you look both ways before you pull out. Or this is a tight space, make sure you pull in slowly or carefully. So here you can see I'm pulling into my driveway, which is a confined space. And now you can see I'm pulling out of my driveway. We also use pull in and out for a chair. So when you bring the chair closer to the table, you're pulling the chair in. When you bring your chair farther away from the table, you're pulling your chair out. So if you're in a busy restaurant and you're trying to pass by someone, you might say, oh, excuse me, can you pull in your chair so I can pass by? Can you bring your chair closer to the table so there's more room for me to pass by? Or if you're too close to the table, then you need to pull your chair out. And traditionally, men will pull out the chair for a woman to have a seat. Maybe that's a little old-fashioned these days. Now you can also pull out of an event, and that means you withdraw from that event, so you no longer participate. And that event can be a race, a competition, or even an election. So let's say there's a competition for a position at your company, and there are 5 people competing for this one position. Now maybe Sarah decides to pull out. She pulls out of the competition, which means she's no longer trying to get that position. She withdraws from the competition. Or maybe you're competing in a marathon, but you hurt your leg the week before, so you have to pull out of the race. You can also pull something apart, which means something is a whole, and then you separate it into individual pieces, which is to pull apart. So something simple like an orange or a grapefruit that has individual pieces, you can pull it apart. You can also pull apart electronics or more complicated things as well. To pull oneself together, this is a great one. This means to regain your composure after you're upset, worried, anxious, or in an extreme emotional state. And to regain your composure just simply means to calm down. So if you're really agitated, maybe you got pulled over by the police and your heart is beating so fast and you're really anxious, your friend in the passenger seat might say, pull yourself together. Pull yourself together, which is another way to say calm down, regain your composure. So go from really anxious to pull yourself together. To pull through means to survive or to successfully recover from an illness. So we use this in a health context. So let's say that Greg had a major heart attack, but thankfully he pulled through. He survived that major heart attack. Now let's say Greg has that major heart attack and then he's in the hospital, you talk to the doctor, and the first thing you're going to say is Greg going to pull through? Is he going to pull through? Is he going to survive? Is he going to recover? The doctor might say, I think he'll pull through, or maybe it's too soon to tell if he'll pull through. And finally, to pull together, this is when you work together as a team. So remember that team had to double their sales by the end of the month? Well, they pulled together to pull it off, to complete that difficult challenge. And after, the boss might say, I'm really impressed by how your team pulled together. It's amazing that everyone pulled together to pull it off. Now you know the most common phrasal verbs with pull. Are you ready for your quiz? Here are your questions. So now hit pause and take as much time as you need to complete the quiz. And when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. How did you do with that quiz? Well, let's find out. Here are the answers. Hit pause, take as much time as you need to review the answers. So how did you do with that quiz? Share your score in the comments, and what was your favorite pull phrasal verb? Share that as well. And now let's move on and talk about phrasal verbs with take. To take off. This is used when a flight leaves the ground. For example, tomorrow my flight takes off at 7 a.m. Or what time did your flight take off? So this is another way of simply saying, what time did your flight leave? Now we also use this phrasal verb to talk about a person leaving a location. So you might be at a party and it's getting late, you have an early meeting, and you say, thanks for the party, I'm going to take off. I'm going to leave. Or someone might ask you, what time did you take off last night? What time did you leave? Now, take off is also used to remove an item of clothing. So at night, before you get into your pajamas, you take off your clothes, right? Before you get into the shower, you take off your clothes. I can also take off my makeup, which means to remove. Or if it's really hot in the room, you might say, oh, it's so hot in here. I need to take off my sweater. Or when you come into the house and it's cold out, you take off your jacket, you take off your shoes, you take off your hat, you take off your gloves, take off your sunglasses. So you can take off an item of clothing, but you can also take off accessories like rings, makeup, glasses as well. Take off can also mean to become successful. For example, after I improved my English speaking skills, my career really took off. My career became successful. My career took off. Or I could say overnight, my YouTube channel took off. My YouTube channel became successful. So many different phrasal verbs with take off, but they're all commonly used. So make sure you learn all these individual meanings. To take after someone. When you take after someone, you resemble them in either personality or appearance, and this is most commonly used with family members. For example, it's very common for a son to take after his dad, which means he looks like him. They look very similar. But you might also say, Julie is so funny. She really takes after Uncle Frank. So maybe Uncle Frank is really funny. He's always telling these hilarious jokes. And then Julie is also really funny. She takes after Uncle Frank. So you can use this with personality or appearance. To take apart. When you take something apart, you disassemble it. So it goes from being whole, one complete item, and then you disassemble it into individual parts. So if your car isn't working, you might take apart the motor or take apart the engine to try to figure out what the problem is. You might also take apart a desk or take apart a bed when you're getting rid of it, when you're removing it from your home, because it's easier to move when it's in individual parts rather than one big structure. To take back. When you take something back, it means that you return a purchased item to the store for a refund. So let's say you bought a pair of shoes at the store, you come home and you realize they don't fit very well or you just don't really like them. Well, you can take them back. So you go to the store, you return the shoes, and you get your money back. Now, we only use this when you physically go to the store. So with online purchases, we actually don't use the phrasal verb take back. So if you order something from Amazon and you don't like it and you want a refund, we simply say, I returned the shoes I bought from Amazon, or I sent back. I sent back the shoes. So just keep that in mind. We only use take back when you physically go to the store. You can also take someone back, which means you reunite a previous romantic relationship. So let's say that Rob and Julie were a couple last year, but then they broke up. They ended their relationship. But then Rob, he begs Julie, please take me back. Please accept me again as your romantic partner. Please take me back. But Julie's friend might say, don't take Rob back. Why would you take Rob back? You shouldn't take Rob back. To take on. When you take on a project or a task, it simply means that you accept that project or task. For example, your boss might ask the team, who has time to take this on? Who has time to take on this new project or this new client? And you might say, I can take it on. I can take it on. So you accept that responsibility for that job. You can also take over a responsibility, a project, a task, which means that you assume responsibility from another person. So let's say Julie took on the project, but then Julie decided to go on a 3-week vacation. So your boss might ask you to take over. So the responsibility goes from Julie to you. Hey Maria, can you take over this project while Julie's on vacation? Or it can be, can you just take over this project? So it can be permanent, it becomes your project permanently, or it can just be a temporary situation while someone is sick or on vacation. To take someone out. When you take someone out, it means you invite them for an activity such as having a meal together or going to the movies together, but you pay for that activity. For example, let's say it's your birthday. Well, your husband, your best friend, your mother, your sister might take you out for dinner, which means they invite you for dinner and they also pay for dinner. That's the important part. Or they might take you out for a nice night at the movies and you go to the movies together, or maybe to the amusement park. So you can do other activities, but it's mainly used with meals. So maybe your friend says, why would you take Rob back? Why would you take Rob back? He didn't even take you out for your birthday. Oh, he didn't invite you out for dinner and then pay for that meal. You can take up a new hobby or activity, which means you start that new hobby or activity. So you could tell your friends, I decided to take up karate, which means you decided to start karate lessons as a new hobby or activity. Or your friend might say, I didn't know you took up dancing. I didn't know you started dancing as a hobby or activity. So now you know the most common phrasal verbs with take. Are you ready for your quiz? Here are the questions. So go ahead and hit pause, complete the quiz, take as much time as you need, and when you're ready, hit play to see the answers. How'd you do on that quiz? Well, let's find out. Here are the answers. So hit pause and review these answers to see how well you did. So how did you do with that quiz? Share your score in the comments and share your favorite phrasal verb with take in the comments as well. And make sure you download this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can download it from my website right here. And when you're ready, get started with your next lesson.